Hello and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, a podcast for manufacturing professionals. Please remember to like and subscribe to our feed to ensure you get our latest episodes. I'm your host, Steve Plum, Editor-in-Chief for SMA Media, along with Amy Bryson, Michael McConnell, and Rachel Thomas. How's everyone doing?
Excellent, Steve.
Good, Steve.
Doing really good today.
Great. And we're here to discuss our first ever State by State of the Manufacturing Industry Report, which is part of the June-July issue of Manufacturing, Engineering, and Technology magazine. The report includes profiles of innovative people, companies, and local initiatives in each state, which are integrated with key statistics and business resources, as well as a fold-out map and interactive digital version on advancedmanufacturing.org. It also coincides with a big milestone in America's history. Does anyone want to hazard a guess on what that could be?
I can't say the word because it's a big long one, but it's the 250th anniversary of the country, something centennial.
Yep, everyone's favorite 18-letter word, semi-quincentennial, I believe it's pronounced, or quarter millennial, or just 250th. And manufacturing has played a crucial role throughout the country's history, starting with several of the founding fathers. So Paul Revere, for example, was an early pioneer, starting a Boston foundry in 1787, which is a good segue into the State by State of the Manufacturing Industry Report, which I know was a big undertaking for all of us. So we divided up the country, and each of us took a handful, or in this case, 2 handfuls of states each. Michael, were there any that stood out for you?
Well, they were all interesting. I really enjoy reading about them. Everybody did some great work, I thought. But one of the ones I thought was pretty interesting was Arkansas. And I found a 3D printing filament manufacturer there called Push Plastic of Springdale, Arkansas. And I was put in contact with them from the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions, which is a state agency that helps foster manufacturing in the state. He put me in contact with these guys, and they're really great. They've been around for not that long, maybe 13 years or so, and they make filament that they ship all over the country. They're in Springdale, Arkansas. He says the gentleman I spoke to, whose name was Seth Hollingsworth, their global president of sales. He says, we have customers that are small hobbyists to companies that are big, with big commercial operations that buy pallet loads of filament from them every month. In the oil and gas industry, they even ship some of their filament around the world. So that was a really interesting to talk to, and they Hollingsworth wanted to make sure he mentioned that Arkansas is a really good place to do business. He said, we're not just known for rice fields and ducks. Apparently that's what Arkansas is known for. I didn't know that. But he said we're also a great place to do business, and apparently to make filament.
Yeah, Mike, that's so funny. Like, it reminds me of one of the stories that I wrote. Push Plastic sounds a lot like Next Spine, not in what they do, certainly, but just this company that is in a market that, I didn't have any experience with. I certainly have never been there. It's Noblesville, Indiana, but the founder of Next Spine, Andy Ellsbury, is actually from Chicago, but he decided to start his company in Noblesville, Indiana, because it was an ideal place to start and grow a business. Noblesville, in that area in, I guess, Northeast Indiana, is known as Ortho Alley, which has the highest concentration of companies in the space, like than in the world, and it's pretty amazing. And NextSpine creates, they design, they manufacture instruments and implants for spinal surgeries. And they're really known for their 3D printing of titanium implants and instruments. But it was just really fascinating to talk to Andy and realize that he chose this location for a variety of reasons, and the least of which is just the quality of life that he and his employees, which now they're up to about 100 employees, and they've been growing steadily, and they've been innovating, and they're they compete with 300 global players in the market, but they're one of a handful of people that actually do the design and manufacturing on site at their own facility in Noblesville. So it's just really cool how we were able to, across the 50 states, find some of these nooks and crannies of manufacturing, as well as some of the, maybe the flashier players that don't get as much attention. And that reminds me of another company or another story that I wrote for New Mexico, and that was about Spaceport America. And many people know Spaceport America because their largest tenant is Virgin Galactic. So, Richard Branson is everywhere. He's a pretty splashy guy, but Spaceport America is really the first purpose-built commercial spaceport in the world, and it's a place where companies go to engineer, manufacture, and test and launch all at one location. It's enormous. It's an FAA licensed launch complex. It's situated on, I think it's more than 18,000 acres. And it's right next to the US Army White Sands Missile Range. So it's a place where people can go, innovate, test, and oftentimes people refer to it as kind of a boondoggle. This commercial space industry. What are they doing over there? Why is Richard Branson over there? But in talking to the folks over at Spaceport, they're saying, there's a lot more that's happening here, and they really want people to know that they're more than just one tenant. And they also they talk about some of the innovations that are happening, but they can't talk about a lot because obviously space is a very complex business, and their tenants, value privacy. So it's an interesting story, and they actually commissioned an independent study to validate kind of their economic impact in the region for people who are skeptical about its value. So we talk about that in the story. So it's really interesting to take a look at the juxtaposition of some of the things that are happening with relation to manufacturing across the country. And space as an industry is such a fascinating industry.
Definitely, and yeah, obviously you can't discount good PR, and Richard Branson certainly supplies that. And we have a good picture of him. I don't know if he was parachuting or propelling down something, and
I think he
when
was christening something. He was, like, in some sort of, like, harness christening something in a bottle of champagne, and I believe, Steve, he was shoeless. I believe he has bare
uh,
feet. So,
yeah,
definitely check out that pic.
yes, in true billionaire spirit.
Yes, I mean, as you do, as you do.
Right. Well, several states have strong and emerging aerospace and defense sectors. Maryland, for example, has transitioned from textiles and chemicals to a thriving manufacturing base. It as one of the original 13 colonies. It has some manufacturing businesses that go back, 150 years and are still in business. But now it has facilities, I think, for 15 of the top 20 of the world's largest A&D companies in the world. But, at the same time, like you were mentioning, there are these small and vibrant small businesses across the country that we discovered, and that started out as one person's dream, or, in the back of a garage. In Montana, I spoke with a guy who had turned a hobby into a fast-growing business. His name is Josh Smith, and he received a hunting knife when he was 11 years old. His family wasn't hunters. I think his little league baseball coach was a master knife maker, and gave it to him. And then he became intrigued and started making his own knives, and became one the world's youngest journeyman bladesmith when he was 15, and then a master bladesmith when he was 19. He sold these high-end customized, beautiful knives for several years. Then, circumstances, life changed, and he had to go to work, and worked as an apprentice at a local power company, but still kept the knife business kind of on the side. And, fast forward about 20 years later, or 15 years later, his soon to be wife encouraged him to start a business. Unfortunately, it was during the height of COVID, but they learned the business from the ground up. They didn't know anything about manufacturing. They didn't know anything about engineering or supply chain. They had to learn it all from scratch. He made some good decisions, partnered with some good people, and 6 years later, he's opened his second new, expanded facility. He had this massive open house where people were lined up at 2 a.m. just to go through a plant tour. And I think there was, 500 to 1,000 people there from across the country, local people as well as customers from all over. And now he has over 100 people. It's just amazing what you can do with the drive and imagination. Yeah, Rachel, anything from stand out from your side?
Yeah, absolutely. As I'm sure all of us, covered with our assigned states, I had a couple of stories that were focused on workforce development that I really enjoyed writing. And, I always like it when I get to, humanize this industry and just talk about some of the people behind the innovations or just behind these really amazing programs that are set up to make, to help manufacturers thrive and everything. So, over in Mississippi, there is a program called Bring Operational Optimization and Smart Technology to Mississippi, which I will say Boost MS for short. And this is a state funded program that helps small and mid sized manufacturers really implement Industry 4.0 technologies to meet their operational needs. And there are a ton of really great stakeholders involved in this. The grant was created by the state's Appalachian Regional Commission and is primarily run by Mississippi State University. They have a program or a center there called the Center for Advanced Vehicular Systems Extension. And then Mississippi Business Alliance, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, is also a stakeholder. And I spent a lot of time talking with Tanya McCall, who is the executive director of the MSU Cavs extension, who told me that a few years ago, her and her team were becoming really aware of just the impact of skilled labor shortages, obviously not just in Mississippi, but, across the country. And they were hearing a lot of, manufacturers wanting to learn how to combat that with new technologies. But, being on the smaller, the mid-sized being those manufacturers, they may not have, the funding or the resources to even, research or, implement those new technologies. So Boost MS was created for that. And it's a full 2-year program that's broken up into phases of, part one is assessing the operational needs and providing a roadmap for manufacturers, and then going all the way to the end where it's, helping them adopt and deploy these new technologies. And at the end of the 2-year program, it's not about, okay, bye, we're done helping you. They really want to make sure, even beyond the 2 years, that they can, continue to support you how they can. So it's really a comprehensive experience. And then North Dakota was another state that I worked on, and they have a project at Bismarck State College called XR for VR, which the full name is Extended Reality for Vocational Rehabilitation. And this project is meant to help North Dakota residents with disabilities obtain careers in manufacturing. And those disabilities are not only physical, but mental ones as well. And aimed at helping people from all walks of life, whether they're veterans, whether they, got their disability, they've had their entire life, or maybe they were on the workforce and, they became disabled at some point. But it's really meant to help people, all across, different walks of life. So yeah, this project at Bismarck State College, it's the first of its kind there. And it also includes, 3 key areas. So the virtual reality headsets they offer, and then there's an immersive reality room where you don't have to wear headsets, but it's a completely extended reality technology room where you can experience a quote day in the life of nearly 80 professions, and most of them are manufacturing roles. So you can really just be in the plant itself or in the, factory itself, just getting to see what these different, jobs entail. There's also a library of assistive technology equipment on loan from one of the stakeholders, North Dakota Assistive. And then there's also one-on-one sessions with an XR for VR career coach to help, identify job opportunities and stuff. So, again, this is another comprehensive program like Mississippi that offers, more than just a technology. They really want to make sure that individuals with disabilities can thrive and, really just be treated like anyone else in the workforce. And so both of these states, they hope to expand their offerings. And another thing that really stood out to me too was on the Mississippi end, both of the people I spoke with, Tanya and Sandy Christ from Mississippi Business Alliance Manufacturing Extension Partnership, they really expressed how, individuals outside of the state, or maybe even, residents of Mississippi who aren't aware of just how robust the manufacturing sector is, or, they may not think that Mississippi has the ability to provide the resources that they do. So it reminds me, Mike, I believe we talked earlier and you had said one of your states also may surprise individuals as far as how vast their sector is.
Yeah, we were talking about, before we started, recording the podcast, Rachel, we were talking about, I was talking about Massachusetts. And, Massachusetts, when I think of it, I think of, the healthcare sector, biotech, the famous higher education, schools they have there. But Massachusetts actually, kind of like Steve mentioned with Maryland, one of the original colonies, also has a long history in manufacturing. Back in the I discovered a little history lesson here. Back in the early 1800s, a businessman named Francis Cabot Lowell started the Boston Manufacturing Company. It was a textile operation, and he devised a way to make fabric that was known as the Lowell system because it was so popular and it worked so well. And while textiles aren't a big deal in the Bay State anymore, as much of the U.S., manufacturing still is alive and well. And that was the message that a woman I spoke to named Lily Fitzgerald, the director of the state's Center for Advanced Manufacturing, really wanted to stress. She says, that's the what I'm most passionate about is that manufacturing is doing well here. We still have a lot of great small businesses that make a lot of important things. And she will be happy to talk about that all day. She was happy to talk about it with me. I learned a lot about what Massachusetts does and how they really work hard to help foster young small businesses to get started, and then to make sure that they're actually a sustainable business because they don't want to support them with state grants if it's not a good idea. So they really work hard to make that happen, which I thought was great.
Yeah, that's amazing stories. We met Lily back at one of our events a couple of years ago, East Tech out in Massachusetts, and she was one of the speakers there, and really does the state proud. Another woman that I met at a recent SME event was Taylor Powell, who was a speaker at South Tech in Greenville, and she was a speaker on a workforce development panel and had so much confidence, enthusiasm, and expertise. And she was only like 27 years old at the time, if that, and just an amazing businesswoman. She's now the COO of Industrial Motor Vehicle Services, which remanufactures motors and other equipment. Her previous experience prior to joining the company was she was working at Chick-fil-A, and which she credits to giving her great attention to detail and training, and they really turn you loose and let you run things. And she was training other workers, which is really now a passion of hers, and she really stresses the importance of cross training, where everybody knows each other's job, and she's applied that at IMVS. So she followed her father's footsteps there, joining Industrial Motor when she was 18. He joined at 18, also directly from the unemployment office. He eventually worked his way up and bought the company. So, Taylor obviously had an in, but she started at the bottom, learned every single role there was at the company, from the front office to the shop floor to driving, and developed new training programs, throughout the business. Uh, and it really encouraged people to take a holistic view of the business. So they were able to apply different marketing lessons throughout the company, and the business is thriving now. And Another young person that took a different path was a guy named Cooper Matus in Pennsylvania. So he grew up near the Mason-Dixon line in southern Pennsylvania, and like a lot of kids, he was getting pressure from his parents and the school counselors to go off to college, and thought that was the path to take. But he was always a very smart, and a self-starter. I think he started, working at different places when he was about 11 years old, and wasn't sure what he wanted to do. He always enjoyed working with his hands, and decided to go into manufacturing directly out of high school to earn some money. Worked for a small cabinet maker, learning the ropes, and really solving problems every day. That there was so short staffed, and again during COVID, he had to learn things on the fly, on how to adapt to supply chains. He has since moved on to a job with Manufacturing Corp of America, which has bought up several small businesses around the country, and jump-started them. And now he's training other employees on advanced hybrid laser equipment. So, there's different ways, different paths for people, and it's just a lot of amazing stories that we ran into. What was it like, just kind of working on all these different stories, and attacking it this way for you guys?
Everybody I spoke to was really excited to talk about what they did, and they were all justifiably proud of their companies and how successful they've been.
It was really cool to see the spectrum of people and the backgrounds of people. Like Steve, you just talked about this young man who was getting pressure from his parents to follow a more traditional collegiate oriented career path. And then we've got, these programs that are working to inspire youth who would never consider careers in manufacturing, that are, devoted to helping them, expose them to STEM and hands-on activities. And then we talk about, these folks with decades and decades of experience that are working at manufacturers who are helping develop training curriculums so that they can pass down their legacy knowledge to help the next generation of workers and leaders be successful, blending the past with the present and the future as more advanced technology enters into all sorts of different manufacturing spaces. So just to see the breadth and the depth of the people behind manufacturing, the processes, and certainly technology is a piece, but it's such a small piece because it really is driven by, the people and the processes. So that was really fascinating for me to be able to, get the privilege of talking to so many people who shared their experiences.
Yeah, I think, Amy, you had spoke to people in Texas, Girls Start, which it was encouraging young girls to get into programs. I think, Mike, you had some other states that were really focusing on driving women into, helping them get into manufacturing. There was another story, I think it was Arizona, maybe, that was with the Uniquely Abled Association, and matching skills with opportunities in different industries. And then you have these, total advanced manufacturing, high tech, like in California. We're talking to a company called Gray Matter, who is involved in physical AI, and helping the defense industry with the shortage in skilled operators, and helping from that end.
Yeah, and another thing that you spurred me to remember this, Steve, is that, we talk a lot about semiconductors and what that means for the industry, and I think people often think about semiconductor jobs have gotta be just so, you're gonna need a significant degree, but there are training programs that are helping people get really well-paying jobs in semiconductor industries across the country, that you could get a certificate or, stackable credentials that you can get, technician level jobs that really start you on those careers to be not only lucrative, but sustaining and evolving and really challenging in a good way. And it's technology-driven stuff that can keep you really, invested and excited about your career. So it's interesting to see how it just, these opportunities just across the spectrum of entry level to certainly more established senior and leadership roles.
And one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the digital companion piece with this, and the map that we generated that will be part of the June-July issue, fold-out map with resources and lots of stats that we used in helping us to inform on these stories, as well as the various state and local agencies. I think Mike, you had mentioned some of those in your reporting.
You know what would be cool to do with that poster, Steve? Pull it out of the magazine, unfold it, put it in your office wall, and then get some thumbtacks and put them in all of the places that you visited in the United States.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so well, we're looking forward to seeing the printed version, which should be coming out in the next few weeks, and the digital companion will be available starting on June 1st, and there will be an interactive map. So all you have to do is visit advancedmanufacturing.org and click on the handy dandy map on whatever state you're interested in doing business in, and up will pop some key resources for you, some key data, as well as the latest stories about that state. So, has any of our team been to all 50 states yet?
No,
No, I have not.
I'd have to count up how many I've been to, but not
No,
all
I was thinking
50.
about that this
Yeah.
morning about how many I've been to, and I mean, it's different if I visited them for amount of time or if I've flown through them, I do not count that, right?
Right.
So,
Well, if
I
I have
you
agree.
get out of the
yeah.
airport, I think that counts. If you say, "Okay, I stepped out on the curb, I'm outside the airport for like an hour,"
Yeah.
I think you can check a
Or if I
box.
had,
That's
like, a
just me.
layover like that show
Yes.
Anthony Bourdain used to do, the
Right.
layover show was so fascinating, but no, I don't know, but I've been to a good bit, and this was a reminder of that and how cool that, traveling overseas is cool, but there's also so many wonderful places in this country to visit, so maybe it'll inspire people to check out more places in the United States as we
Right.
celebrate the 250th anniversary.
That's right. I think the only one left on my list is Alaska, and
Ooh,
hope to get there
I
soon.
have been there, so I
nice.
got that.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and have a great Memorial weekend. And please visit us at advancedmanufacturing.org, and remember to like and subscribe to our feed.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.